video cassette and select DVD. They'll leave you screaming for more.
Hey,
ghoul
friends.
friends.
Hello. Welcome to
Hey,
another episode of
that was
Beer
good.
Queers.
Yeah,
it was
that
great.
was-
Considering the internet, it wasn't bad.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. We're back with an episode, and we are here with the director, the filmmaker, Colin Cooper.
Yes.
Yay! And we're so excited to have you. And can you tell the people a little bit about who you are, what you work on, what you do, your project Bath Bomb, which we're also very excited to talk about today.
Sure.
All those things.
Yeah. I'm a Toronto-based director and editor, probably mostly known for music video stuff. And I'm gearing up to make a short horror film that's intended to be a queer take on the giallo subgenre, which in my opinion was always queer. So why not? Why shouldn't it should be made by queer people? And we did a crowdfunding campaign that the first part of ended on Friday, but we reached our goal and we're on Indiegogo.
I saw
So now
that.
we're in
Congratulations.
the thing. Thank you.
Congratulations. That's awesome. That's like huge. That's great.
Huge.
Well, we still want to raise more.
Absolutely. No,
Absolutely.
that's what we're here to do today. Okay.
Yes.
We're taking calls all day long. This is a
Yes.
telethon.
Colin.
And we actually have a cool team behind it, where the cinematographer is Jeremy Benning, who is an openly gay cinematographer who created the look of The Expanse, which and was the primary cinematographer for all 6 seasons, which is rare in TV. Some people don't know how
Yeah.
TV works, but if you're a director or a cinematographer in TV, you don't normally have a ton of creative control because it's established by the showrunners. So there's usually like a revolving door of directors and cinematographers, but he was on for the duration of the series. He's done episodes of The Boys. He did 2 episodes of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, including Anna Lily Emmerpour's episode, which is my favorite episode of the series, the one with the skin cream.
Yes.
Very good.
He's currently shooting Cross, which is what's his name? James Patterson had a series of novels with the character Alex Cross that was played by Morgan Freeman in the movies in the 90s. That's now a TV series. He's shooting that, so we're waiting for him to finish that before we start production on Bath Bomb.
Cool.
We also have Teresa Wayman, founding member of Warpaint, indie rock band Warpaint, composing the score with her brother Ivan.
That's
who
awesome.
was a producer who worked with Adele and the Killers and Carly Rae Jepsen and Weezer and Beck and Father John Misty and a bunch of other peeps. Our executive producer is also executive producer on the new upcoming Nicolas Cage horror movie Long-Legs.
That's awesome. More Cage. We need more Cage.
He's
More
in the
Cage
best
and horror.
period of his career right now.
Yes.
Truth. Yeah. And we have a cool poster that was designed by Creepy Duck, who's did the posters for Smile and Mandy and the last 2 Scream movies.
Love some Creepy Duck. We love Creepy Duck here.
Cool.
And the poster's amazing.
The poster is amazing. And like, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but like something I did like some preliminary research into giallo films. Of course, like sort of the angle to this episode is that Beyza and I know virtually nothing about giallo films. But I did a little bit of research, and then of course, like we watched Deep Red, which you're going to be talking about today. But I something that kind of jumped out to me is like, it really does sort of like bring in, you would need a lot of creative power from different practices and different like things, and each with like very distinct flair. So like, it's cool that you have such a robust team, but I want to just ask before we get into anything else, like, how did you assemble that team? Because like there's such specific style and flair in like the music and also the visuals and also like the staging, like all of it is so stylized. So how did you kind of like bring this team of like superheroes together for the movie?
So they are superheroes. It's a good way to put it. I once the script was written, I met the screenwriter at Film Quest, which is like a horror festival in Provo. They do a filmmaker speed dating thing,
I love that.
and during the our little, I think we had like 90 seconds or something. We hadn't like pitched a project that we were like, yeah, let's work on that, but we knew that we liked each other. He lives in Mexico City. His name's Michael Clifton, and he sent me a bunch of screenplays that he had that were unproduced, all shorts, and one of them was written for a 1-minute screenplay competition, so it was only 1 page, and it ended with a very like giallo image.
Mm.
And I had been looking for something to do queer. I've been wanting to do queer giallo forever. I just wasn't like actively pursuing it. And then when I read that, I was like, oh, this is perfect if we can expand it. And it wasn't quite fleshed out because he was purposely trying to fit something into 1 page. So we decided, like, what would this story be if you gave it the breadth it needed to be its full story? And so then from there we expanded it into what it is now and expanded the giallo elements. And then once the script was in a stage we wanted, I put together a pretty comprehensive pitch deck, which is like it's like a more in-depth version of the campaign. So I had made these videos that said what giallo was, what queer representation in giallo was like, what violence in giallo was like, music in giallo, and pulling together clips from dozens and dozens of giallo films into these videos, and then I used that to pitch. And Ronnie Exley, the executive producer, the guy I mentioned is working on the Nick Cage movie, I've known him for years. I work with him on a festival that he runs called Psycho Las Vegas, which is like a big, predominantly metal festival in Las Vegas.
That's awesome.
He's been recently getting into film and has wanted to work with me, and this project felt right. And then once he was attached, he just has his fingers in a lot of pies. He has connections with a lot of people, and he also is like, you might as well shoot for the highest possible target type guy.
Hell yeah.
So
love that.
we were talking about people I wanted to collaborate with. I was like, well, kind of the biggest openly queer cinematographer who I know likes to give back to the community is Jeremy Benning, who lives in Toronto, where I live.
Oh, wow.
And so he encouraged me, well, like, find a connection and reach out to him. So through my social circle, I found one person who knew him.
That's
and
awesome.
So they connected to us. I gave him sent him the script and the pitch deck, and then he said, yeah, I'd love to do this when I have time. And then same thing for music, we were looking at a few different options because a lot of giallo was based in like the jazz lounge space, but experimental. Even in Deep Red, Goblin is a progressive rock band, but there's jazz and funk elements to the score.
Yeah.
And so originally we were approaching like actual jazz groups like Bad Bad Not Good. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're like just a bunch of nerdy white dudes from Toronto who have done jazz production for a lot of big pop artists. And but Teresa from Warpaint, Ronnie knows her really well. Warpaint played at Psycho actually last year, and she had expressed interest in doing film scoring stuff in general. And
that's so cool.
When he mentioned her, I thought, well, that's interesting because she doesn't do jazz. So if we're like keeping in the spirit of experimentation, which giallo was about, it would be interesting to hear her do something jazz. So her and her brother, Ivan actually is trained in jazz drums, her brother, and so they did like a feeling it out type session where they composed something just based on the beats of the script, and it was great. So
that's amazing. I can't wait to hear that.
That's
cool.
Awesome.
That sounds amazing. It sounds like you're living every person's dream, because that sounds like a lot of hard work, but also like dream worthy stuff. I mean, is this something you've like always this project is something you've like always kind of wanted to do?
Oh,
sorry, Beyza.
Oh, sorry.
So your internet cut out a little bit.
I know what you were saying.
What did you hear last? What did you hear last?
Is it something that you've always wanted
To do.
Yeah. Yeah, I had seen Giallo movies before I knew that Giallo. There was this like auteur cinema course where they just pick a couple of auteurs and watch a bunch of the movies, and they had like a Cronenberg Argento one, and so they did a whole bunch of Giallo in the Argento one, and they started talking about Giallo and what Giallo was, and it just felt like the queerest thing I'd ever seen, and it still does. Like most Giallo movies were made in the late 60s and early 70s, but there are almost zero of them that don't have any queer characters. And it's not just that there's queer characters, but queer characters are always key to the plot. Whether that's in a really negative way or in a actually there's never like a good way. It's either fully negative or it's like not quite as bad. Like this whole stream, Giallo's kind of like murder mystery, horror, and erotic thriller, just in different balance depending on the movie. And it, the ones that lean more erotic thriller, especially pre Bird with the Crystal Plumage, which was the first one that Argento did that kind of started the boom period. A lot of those ones that were leaned into erotic thriller, the standard story was you have an ostensibly heterosexual woman who's lured away from her like straight and narrow path by a queer woman, and that ends in different ways, usually with the queer woman dying. And so yeah, that was already like very queer. And then I've been on a couple of other podcasts talking about how like if you watch some of like later period Argento stuff like Deep Red or something like Suspiria, if you just watch that knowing nothing about it and somebody told you that it was directed by a flamboyant gay man, you would be like, yeah, of course it was.
Yes.
That just happens to not be the case. And so it blew my mind that it wasn't, that they weren't being made by queer people. And so there's been kind of a, Giallo is just amongst filmmakers, I don't know how much in the public it's being talked about. It's kind of having resurgence, and like Malignant was James Wan's version of Giallo, and Last Night in Soho was a love letter to Giallo. And so I just feel like if it's going to come back, why let's have queer people bring it back, because it had so much queer potential. It could be just this like super queer genre. So that's why I wanted to do it.
I love that. Something I've been like talking a lot about with friends is like we're like, just in terms of characters that are coded as queer or come across as queer. It's like we're talking about how you can really tell when a queer person is coding a character to be queer or a straight person is coding a character to be queer. And really like, and sometimes in ways that you can't even explain, right? Like there's just something about that, like about a story being written by someone who's experienced it and lived it that hits so much different, and that other people from like those walks of life can like identify with in a way that's like implicit. It's just like, yeah, I can feel that one was actually handled by and created by and ran by queer people on a creative team. So I love that. That's really awesome. Really, really cool.
Yeah. And I think you can, it's funny to talk about like good and bad examples of queer rep in Giallo, obviously, but also in just horror generally. That's kind of like what we talk about on this podcast is just like, and a lot of people talk about it too on other podcasts, but I think the representation of queerness in horror, I mean, horror's roots is queer. Like the roots of horror as a genre are by queer people, and just queerness as an everyday kind of feeling and like life. And I think it's so interesting to like see this kind of resurgence as you're talking about, like with these homages to Giallo as a genre. And I can't wait to see Bath Bomb. I'm so excited. I'm ready for it. And we do want to talk about it a little bit more and kind of where you're at with it. But while we're kind of doing this like very helpful Giallo 101, thank you for schooling us a little bit.
Papa Giallo.
Papa
You are our
Giallo,
Papa
yeah.
Giallo.
What have we been saying to each other when we're trying to talk about Giallo Chase?
Cacio e pepe.
Cacio e pepe. That's what we're saying.
Cacio e pepe.
So speaking of that, should we talk a little bit about Deep Red, because this is a movie you recommended to us.
Sure, yeah.
And definitely it's queer to me.
So
It is queer to
this
me.
one is super important to me because when I first saw it, I was like, this Marcus Daly, the main character played by the dude from Blow Up. I was like, that guy's closeted, like obviously. It's not even just
Yes.
like
That is like
subtext, it's
my
this
first
guy's
note.
so closeted.
That's like
And
the
so-
first thing I wrote when I saw him on the
So
screen.
in film school, I was giving people all of these other people in film school all of these examples. Sorry, I have some of them written down, and I won't say them all because this will take forever. But you know, the Carlo character, who's explicitly stated as queer,
Mhm.
they're often positioned as like mirrors of each other. When all the scenes that happen in the fountain, they're wearing clothes that are color inversions of each other,
Yes.
and they're positioned on opposite sides of the frame. And there's so many things that he says, like the difference between you and I is purely political. And there's just so many of these little interactions where you're like, this guy's
Yes.
obviously his gay doppelganger. Like that's the
Yes.
point
Yes.
of this character. And then also the Gianna character, Daria Nicolodi's character, the female, their relationship is just all about gender subversion.
Yes.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she even wears almost the same clothing that Carlo wears in a couple of scenes where she's got the white collared shirt underneath the black blazer. The one thing that gets cut out of the American version is there's already enough of the gender inversion stuff going on, but there's the scene where they do the arm wrestling, and previous
Yes.
to that he says that, you know, men are stronger. There's a reversal of that scene later in the film that gets removed where he says the opposite, that women have brute strength but men have a monopoly on intelligence. And it's like the opposite of what would have at the time and historically been considered the gender norms for those two attributes. It's super interesting. And then when he goes to Massimo Ricci's place, Carlo's lover, that is such a weird, obviously queer scene.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
he's so flustered by
He's
Massimo
so taken aback. Yeah.
Yeah, at first you're like, oh, is he uncomfortable with the gender ambiguity? But then when Massimo says goodbye and like blows him a kiss at the ending, there's obviously a tender moment between them there. And that character too, Massimo, is so weird. They cast a woman to play that role and then dubbed it with a man's voice and gave him
Oh,
like
really?
the
Well, that explains the gender euphoria I felt watching that scene.
That's absolutely my gender. That is my gender. I just have to say, like, and I don't think we can go like plot point by plot point, which I wish we could, but like I was very surprised by how queer this movie was.
I was too.
By like, and I while I was watching it, I was just like, I was thinking to myself, did people in 1975 understand that, or was it just kind of overlooked? But that's kind of what I love to see in a movie, is like when it makes me think about you know, a classic makes me think about how the audience kind of interpreted it in the time. And I don't know the answer to that, but it really, like, I don't know, especially in the 70s and going into the 80s, which is obviously a time for us as queer people. That's like, that kept me very like in tune with what I was watching the entire time.
So after, you know, I had expressed these opinions to people in film school, most of whom are straight, they were like, oh, you're reading into stuff that's not really there.
As usual.
And then when I started collecting Giallo films, like Blu-ray releases of Giallo films, there's a company, Arrow Video, that releases a lot of them. And they have this guy, Michael McKenzie, this Scottish guy who's straight. He does a lot of the commentary. And I looked him up because he had the best commentary by far. And he's also an academic, and he had written this a thesis on gender representation in giallo, and he has a whole section on queer representation that is so spot on. And he does a case study of Deep Red, and like point by point had all the exact same things I had been saying.
How
Wow.
validating. That is
That's very
awesome.
validating.
I actually went to Glasgow and had lunch with him.
Wow.
Oh my God.
I looked
That's
him up and
amazing.
emailed him, and I went to Glasgow and had lunch with him. And
That's
yeah,
amazing.
it's all the same stuff. So he actually also told me that Argento has been interviewed, had been asked about that many times over the years,
Interesting.
and said that he did intend for the film itself to feel queer, and that the Gianna character was intended to be queer, but that he hadn't considered the Marcus character queer, but that he understands the interpretation because the film itself is intended to be queer. And he even talked about like some of the things he did on purpose, like the opening flashback scene of the killing when the knife falls. That could be a little girl's legs based on.
Oh,
like,
I
the
noticed
fire.
that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was trying to do gender, like subvert people's gender expectations all the way through. Similarly, in the montages leading up to each murder, you see thick eyeliner being put on, but the killer is
Yes.
always seen in inserts wearing men's clothing.
Mm.
And yeah, and then is revealed to be a woman. Spoiler to everybody's watching this. So yeah, that was all done on purpose, but it's funny that he didn't consider the Marcus character queer.
And I also love and that's obviously what giallo is like these mystery elements in horror. I feel like I like that kind of playing with gender in the mystery of it all is very like, I don't know. I never really saw, I for some reason, initially that idea to me is kind of like, well, it doesn't always have to be a mystery. Like you can, you should be proud in your gender identity and you should, XYZ. But I do kind of, there is a lot of like ownership and, just like power and like your gender being a mystery. And I do think that this film specifically was one of the first times where I was like, whoa, this is actually very, inspiring is the wrong word, but like just kind of like badass, like very just, I don't know, I really respected it. And there are so many things we could talk about. I also just want to point out that the medium Helga, I believe her name is like, that is like who I would think Lady Gaga is now, if that makes sense.
Oh God.
Like her being the like psychic medium, like wild woman who just is like, I don't know, she just gave queer icon energy to me. I connected that with Lady Gaga, maybe because she's Italian. I don't know.
Maybe it's the Italian, but no, there's also like that one interview where she's like talking and she's there's like her art pop era, so she's like, it's sort of like when in my body. And she like just stops, like it, like none of it makes sense. And it definitely had that energy. So I agree with that.
I just really respected her character, and I love that she's kind of who sets off this entire journey for us. And I just like, I think her death was also really fucking cool. Like I was sad to see it, but it was, I don't know. I think the deaths in this movie are very, my favorite one is at the end, but they're all just very creative and like, kind of slashery, but not really, and just very like.
So that's essentially what giallo was it was the direct precursor to slasher, and it established the entire language of slasher, like seeing through the killer's eyes, killings that are done in inserts, films that are built around kill sequences as the main set of the film, and then Americans kind of but the killer is always like a person. And they're not subhuman like a Jason or a Mike Myers, and they're usually part of your social circle. And in the film, you're always trying to figure out who the killer is, and often with the police doing a parallel investigation that is hopeless because they suck at what they're doing. And so usual. Americans kind of stripped away certain elements of those, and a lot of the really like more flamboyant artistry elements of it to make slasher. There are slasher films that lean more toward giallo, if not stylistically, at least narratively. Like the Scream series are absolutely more giallo than they do slasher because of it's somebody and you're spending the whole time figuring it out.
And there's phone
and they
calls, and there was a wonderful phone call in Deep Red where I was like, it was giving Ghostface
Yes.
vibes on the other side. Like it was just
so,
like,
so if you should find this movie called Black Sabbath, which is an
Okay.
anthology horror movie in 1963. It's Mario Bava essentially created giallo with this movie called The Woman Who Knew Too Much, and that was black
Yeah.
and white. Then he did one of the shorts in Black Sabbath is called Il Telefono, and that's the first time he did giallo in color. And the plot of that
Wow.
is the killer's on the phone, first time ever in cinema. The killer's on the phone while talking to the killer. The woman realizes that the killer could see her, and it's like it ends up that the person on the other line is a friend disguising their voice to fool her. Like
Wow.
it's essentially like a 25-minute precursor to what the whole Scream franchise ended up being.
I was gonna say, even Deep Red had a lot of Halloween vibes, just in terms of like the music, like the theme coming in was
And
very
your
John
POV
Carpenter.
POV as the killer. Yeah.
Yes, and even like the opening shot where it's like there's like a kid and blood and knife and murder.
I
Like
loved
it was
it.
giving, it was just
Yeah,
giving
yeah.
Halloween to me. It was
all
definitely
the Freudian flashback stuff
Yes.
of giallo was
Oh,
taken directly into
I
slasher.
I have things to say about Carlo. And I mean, it's just like the mommy issues. I would love to talk about the mommy issues for a minute.
Sure.
As someone with mommy issues, I think that's just kind of like that is we love, like, queers love a mommy horror. Like we just do. I think it's kind of like
Evil Dead Rising.
Yes,
Evil Dead Rises,
exactly.
yeah.
I haven't
She
seen
is
it, so
she is rising.
Oh, we're seeing it tomorrow. We have not
We
seen
haven't
it
seen
either.
it
We're seeing
yet.
it tomorrow.
tonight, so.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Perfect.
Love that for us.
Yes. Yes. I mean, she, like, Carlo's mom, like, she rose, the evil rose. And I love I don't know. I there's so much to go with this, but I just feel like it kind of informed, like you were saying, the classic American horror slasher genre of like Jason Voorhees. Like it's very, I mean, there are so many threads that you can tie. I mean, I felt like I was doing a little mystery within the mystery, just kind of like seeing how horror has like evolved and like how Americans stole things from the genre. And like,
Yeah.
now Jason's like a huge icon. I mean, and I don't know if Carlo would be considered an icon, but he definitely could be if we let him. We should let him.
There's a direct line from another Mario Bava movie called Bay of Blood to the Friday the 13th franchise. And if you look in on our Instagram account, I have a reel that I put together where I cut side to side kill scenes from A Bay of Blood that were just directly replicated in the first and second
Wow.
Friday the 13th. Yeah.
We will be watching.
We will be watching. And when I was watching my little intro Giallo video on YouTube, it mentioned that. But I have a question about sort of like about like the mommy issues of it all, but also like the Freudianness, and also even kind of like Beyza, what you were talking about earlier, like the mystery and like intrigue around gender, and like why I think I'm so excited for Bath Bomb, and I would love for you to speak about this a little bit, is like there is part of it that is relatable. There's part of it that it's just a movie, but there's also part of it that feels like to use queerness in that way is like to like deep, like, make it seem like a deviant thing, right? And it's like it stems from like these deviancies stem from like family issues and like childhood traumas and unhealthy relationships with parents or with whatever. So how do you, when you're succeeding in, when you are paying homage to a genre that you love like that, how do you like honor that aspect to it, where there is mystery and intrigue and there is sort of like this deviancy to whatever's going on, while also like honoring the queerness of it without sort of like conflating those two? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I think with Bath Bomb is a very small chunk of, we're essentially like launching we have this like universe of queer giallo that we're gonna make. So
You have my attention.
Bath Bomb is gonna be one piece of the first feature project we're doing is an anthology queer giallo feature. It's actually the first time I've talked about this yet, and I won't say too much because I want somebody to steal it before we make it.
Ooh.
But
Yeah.
it's
We'll
the
bleep
fe-
it.
the anthology is going to be called "Their Blood Is Upon Them," which is a reference to Leviticus 20:13, which is what
Mhm.
queer people should die essentially.
Yeah.
And
Heard of it?
it's the way anthology horrors work is like you have the frame narrative and then the shorts
Mhm.
within it. So the frame narrative is a queer student who has been booted from a prestigious university's creative writing program for committing academic dishonesty. He plagiarized something, and he gets contacted by a Catholic university that's willing to interview him to potentially switch into their creative writing program, which is suspicious, and he's not really interested in going to a Catholic school, but he has no other
Right.
option, so he goes for the interview. And the impetus for cutting to other shorts, Bath Bomb is essentially what he has written as a short story, and then he finds
Ooh.
these other short
Wow.
stories, and as he reads them, we see those shorts, and he starts discovering as he reads subsequent stories that they're all queer, and he's wondering, what are the odds that everybody who's applied to this program is queer? And it ends up that obviously the school is doing something nefarious, like purposely recruiting queer people to do something to them.
Yeah.
What
Wow.
that is, you'll find out in the movie.
Colin, this
Um,
sounds great. This sounds really good.
I'm ready.
and then we have a feature after that called The House of Broken Dolls that we're writing right now, which is like turns on its head the concept of conversion therapy. It focuses on a clinic that kind of older men go to, people who really didn't come to terms with their queerness until later in life, to through therapy kind of acceptance of the queer self is the goal. And it's run by this like matriarchy of elderly woman that is supposed to be a nod to like Suspiria and movies like that. And then there's murders going on in the clinic, and you don't really know if these elderly women are responsible or if somebody else is. That's all I can really say about that one. And then we have a queer giallo body horror that like Cronenberg style that would come after that.
Ooh.
Damn.
But anyways, in response to your question, it's like we're trying to, not that it's less coding and more overt, but, and it's not, none of these are intended just for a queer audience, but they're written with the assumption that people coming to them have a knowledge base of queer coding and queer culture. So there's less, we're not trying to like hide things in the same way that things would have been hidden or turned into subtext in older films, because audiences now have, even straight audiences, if they're cinema goers, understand certain things that wouldn't have been understood at the time. And we're not trying to do period pieces either. These are modern giallo films, because there's a movie, Knife Plus Heart, that and that's essentially a queer giallo, but it's a period piece. It's a it's a
very much.
to
Okay.
previous era.
I know we're still talking about deep red, and Beyza, I know you're gonna kill me, but I have a question that's like related. Well, I just have a question that's related to that, because like this concept of like of it being like you are considering modern audiences, and like in that consideration, are there any like sort of like, what kind of adjustments do you make to your like giallo, if any, to adjust towards the audience? And the queerness aside, it's just sort of like, it's like watching Deep Red, for example. Like, I love it, but I know that not everyone would love it, and I know that some people might get bored, or some people like might think that things are taking too long, or all those types of things that like audiences these days kind of want like a lot of information. They want it all compact. They want it all to make sense. They want to be told, I don't know, from my perspective, want to be told all these things. But so how do you sort of like find that balance of like interpreting it and kind of modernizing it while also again honoring it?
So I think there's kind of two considerations there. The difference between modernizing something and converting it for the mainstream. The mainstream now is very different than it was before, but we're not really trying to cater to like the how many plot points can you fit in the scene model of filmmaking.
You're not the MCU, right? You're not Marvel.
But we're also not trying to, be completely self-indulgent where you've got 10 minutes where no plot happens. You know, we're trying to be somewhere in between there, especially with the first one. I think the anthology film will be the most like I don't know if you'd say American, but it's because it's short films and you do need to be quick with and economical with your plot points in a short film. It's going to be the most like, oh, this plot is happening very immediately, and you know, the pace is pretty quick in terms of the information that you're being fed. There's not a lot of like hanging around before you hit the next exposition.
Right.
But then after that, I think the subsequent features are leaning more towards, I mean, there is a space now in even in mainstream cinema for movies that are not catering to like the full-on monomyth, this is how a story is supposed to go page by page thing. You know, horror movies like what Ari Aster has been up to and such, that can be slower, and maybe none of the characters learn any lessons or change at all. But
Slow is a word. Slow is definitely a word.
Yeah, and I think we're leaning a little bit in that direction with the later features, but still definitely within the realm of this is a movie that makes sense to the masses and could play in a cinema environment.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
because like I feel like there is probably part of it is like conscious choices and like in production and pre-production everything, but also part of it is like, well, if artists are coming together to make a giallo film in 2023, it's innately going to be already interpreted from like that, like everyone's like no one I assume no one making Bath Bomb or working on your anthology is like from, you know, was working in giallo film in 1975, right? So like it'll organically almost sort of like come from a lens that is quote unquote modernized, but not without being intentionally that way. For
the first feature after the anthology one, for House of Broken Dolls, the one that takes place at like the queer clinic, our like ultimate goal is, because the matriarchy is all older, we want to bring back some of the original giallo queens to play those roles. That's like
okay.
our dream.
How do we make it happen? Who do we need to call?
Yes. Yeah. I'm calling Joe Biden after this call tonight.
Joe Biden.
He'll get him for us.
Get his
He's
artist coalition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get his artist coalition and Lady Gaga.
And Lady Gaga. Exactly.
You
Kind
never
of like
know.
the biggest get would be like my favorite giallo queen is Edwidge Fenwick, and she was in most of the like erotic thriller versions of giallo. She was the star in a lot of them.
Oh, I love that.
She retired from acting and became a producer in like the 90s, so she doesn't act anymore, but we're gonna see.
It's happening. I'm lighting my candle tonight.
I'm manifesting. I am 100%. Manifesting it.
And in terms of like updating the way that queerness is represented, that's going to be different from film to film too. Like in that one, in House of Broken Dolls, there are no straight characters. It's an entirely queer environment, so there's not really coding going on. It's like, hey, this is a clinic for queer men. Like it's just going to be very queer. There's going to be shit tons of full frontal male nudity. Like that's just the way it's, you know.
Yeah,
it'll be very obvious that it's.
Can't
if
wait.
you walked into it not knowing that it was queer, I don't know how that happened.
You're gonna get hit in the face with something, and it'll wake you up. I honestly, I have one more thing that I need to talk about in Deep Red, if that's okay.
Yeah. I also have one more thing I need to talk about Deep Red. So that sounds great. Let's go back to Deep Red.
Okay.
Oh, wait, can I say just one thing first?
Yes, please.
You both kind of have different versions of what people now would call bisexual lighting, especially
Oh yeah, that's on purpose. Yes, as we
so you're aware, that comes from giallo. So
really?
First landmark giallo is called Blood and Black Lace, directed by Mario Bava, and that is one of the first. It's the first feature-length color giallo, and it is that exact type of lighting. And then Argento went on to make it more mainstream because he happens to be the Giallo filmmaker that was the most influential outside of Italy. But he, you know, he did a ton of it in Suspiria, Inferno, and yeah, it's one of the few situations where like a marginalized population co-opted something from the mainstream.
That'll be ours.
Okay, I could literally do a whole podcast about that. Like, I just want you to come back and talk about that because I could listen to you. I mean, I feel like I'm in the best college class I've ever
I know.
paid for.
I feel like I'm in a master class. This is
I
good.
really do feel that way. Yeah. Well, Chase, you say your one thing.
Okay, well, okay. Well, if I'm saying one thing, then I'm just gonna say, aside from the line, absolutely trying to kill me, you know, that was like the funniest line to me because like they're just like trying to kill me, you know, which I thought was just like a funny way to say someone's in my house trying to murder me, which I thought was great. And then also the House of the Screaming Child, me growing up, the House of the Screaming Child, and then I also have to say, Gianna, like. I just want to say during the arm wrestling scene specifically, her performance in that was like, okay, I got a BFA in undergrad, and I usually watch things from an acting perspective. The way that she was able to flip her voice, which is like, it's so subtle, but she'll go from being really, really grounded and very like dominant, and then she'll go straight to, well, where are you going? Like, and very sort of like feminine and light and sort of like dependent. Like she goes from like the way she uses her voice to be from like independent to dependent. And it's like, it is like line after line. She is like presenting as like, I mean, in very traditional terms, like presenting male, presenting female, presenting male, presenting female throughout that whole scene. I just thought her acting was
She's
like
aware. She's
amazing.
always aware in the movie of what gender she's projecting.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And she uses it on purpose to like,
it's
you know,
so good. And it's just like my non-binary ass was on the floor during that scene. I was like, that is how you use gender. That was like awesome. It was just so cool the way she used her voice in that.
It's also very empowering as like she's a woman as we know her in this movie, but it's empowering for her. Like I enjoyed like how smart she is with it and when she knows it'll be to her benefit and when it'll be to her detriment to like have power. And I think she killed it in this movie.
you should try to find the original because almost all of the 22 minutes that was cut out are additional scenes between her and Marcus. And the reason that they are removed is because they're comedic and American distributors wanted it to just focus on the horror elements and remove the comedy. And it's even more of the like gender role play is at the forefront of all those scenes.
You mentioned earlier where it's like sort of like the inverse of like the arm wrestling scene in a way. I need to go watch those other 20 minutes for sure.
Yes.
Unfortunately, there's the original English version of them doesn't exist. It's just Italian dub of those. So you don't get the same nuances, but they're still great.
Is the 2-hour one on Shudder?
No, so I was going to say the Shudder one is the American release, which
okay.
I didn't know until this morning. But I mean, you can get Blu-ray versions of the full. Like Arrow Video has a great Blu-ray release of it where they have the hybrid version, which is the full Italian version, but it's English except for the scenes that were not recorded in English, and it switches to Italian with subtitles just for those scenes.
Whoa,
that's very cool. I'll be doing some online shopping this evening.
Beyza and I will have a movie night. We live, by the way, like a 7-minute walk away from each other. But
yes, so we'll have we will definitely have a movie night. I just wanted to say one more thing that I could not go without saying in this episode, but Martha's death scene is probably one of the most inspiring death scenes I've seen. Again, bad choice of words, but just so like I felt something when I watched that. I took a screenshot of her bloody necklace and I wrote, "This is queer." I don't know exactly
I don't know what it means yet.
I don't know why, but I just know. And that's how I felt about this whole movie. So I feel very validated now. But I loved that was her. I also love the drama of this movie. I think that inherent dramatic tone is very queer, and Martha is a drag queen to me. Like she is everything that like I want to see on a drag stage perform, like in a bar. Like I just love her energy, and I love her creepy little reflection in the mirror, like that. Like
That was everything.
I loved everything about her. And
Did you
yeah.
rewind? Did you go back to the starting? The first time that he goes to the crime
Can you
scene?
see her?
Yeah, you can see
Yeah.
it.
Oh
They didn't
yeah.
even try to hide it. They didn't even try to hide it. And you just
No,
don't notice
it's
when you're watching it for the first time.
no, it's not even I didn't even blink. Like I didn't even, and I love little clues like that. And I just loved everything about her. I loved her like soft butch energy in her trench coat. It was like, I don't
Yes.
know. I just wanted like 20 more movies where she's literally a killer.
It's
And
because you're a Scream fan and you want
I know
like a whole franchise. You
I
want
want her in a ghost face
yeah, you do. I know.
outfit and mask. She walked so oh my god, what's his name? So Mrs. Loomis. Oh my god, I literally was gonna call her Mrs. Martha. Mrs. Loomis could run. Like that is
Yes.
her energy to me. So
Oh, totally.
it's
Actually,
very
like,
much that.
yes, very that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I just appreciated everything about her, and I want her to adopt me.
Mother.
Mother. She's mother.
Mother Martha.
She's Mother Martha. That's all I had to say.
Well, I want to give the floor to Colin. I know we're kind of wrapping up on an hour here, but like I also love that this episode has been kind of all over the place because it kind of is like one of those things where I don't know. I feel like what I love about Giallo that I'm learning to love, and I can't wait. Honestly, genuinely, I'm so happy you reached out because you introduced Beyza and I to this like new subgenre that we didn't know that much about. So it's like it feels very exciting to have this like coming from like this beginner's mind to go through and like now we have like a new hyperfixation. Now we can go like
Yeah.
watch all these Giallos, but to have such like a highly super creative subgenre to be able to dip our toes in is a treat. So I want to ask you if like there's anything else you want to hit on in terms of Bath Bomb, where you are now and also where you're headed in terms of like crowdfunding, but also in terms of like your creative process. Like where are you and the team at? You mentioned like some of the music's already been worked on, but like, yeah, where are you at right now?
So we kind of just started actual pre-production today.
Ooh.
We're not shooting until the second week of June, but getting preliminary balls rolling right now. We're gonna do. We had done some attempts at casting early on that didn't work out, just because we were approaching more like known people, and it's hard to get them to commit to something short when they have offers coming in for like features and things. So
Yeah.
so we lost
Mhm.
we lost some people that we were going to cast. So we're gonna do like a normal casting call with a casting director, as one does, and start looking at locations and building props and things. There's some hilarious props that I can't tell you about because it'll ruin
Oh, I
what
can't
happens.
wait.
And as far as the campaign goes, the 25K original goal was like, we can make it for that much money, but we'd like to make it for more.
Yeah,
Of course.
absolutely. Oh my God.
Especially now that we have, with Jeremy attached, the cinematographer, he's bringing on the crew that he works with on like Cabinet of Curiosities and The Expanse and things. So it's costly to have them out.
Mhm.
And so we're looking, because we're in demand now on Indiegogo, we can keep it open indefinitely.
Mhm.
So we're planning to keep it open right through post-production in an attempt to raise, ideally, get the 25K up to 60K. And we do have some other private funding options that we're going to reach out to if that looks like it's not gonna happen. But point being that it's gonna get made regardless, and it's gonna be the best version it can be, even if it means that, you know, I'm in debt for a decade. But
Well, it's gonna slay. From what we've heard about, it's all gonna be worth it. I mean, this sounds really, really, really cool, and we're both so
Yes.
excited.
And if I don't know what if our little podcast that could somehow get you 60K, we're gonna do it. I don't know how, but we're gonna try.
Oh, we're bringing in that extra 40 for sure.
Yes,
for sure.
Just us. Yeah.
Just us two. 20 on Beyza, 20 on me.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes, and maybe some extra from Lady Gaga if she hears this. Who knows?
Oh, I'll send it. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
she has it.
She has
yes,
it.
she
She can spare it. She can spare a little bit for her Italian roots, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Well, I feel very inspired. I feel very ready to buy a lot of movies and support Bath Bomb. And
Be forewarned though, diving into Giallo, that, you know, the Deep Red in terms of representation is one of the more sensitive depictions of queer characters. You're gonna come across a lot of not good stuff.
As a longtime general horror fan, maybe we can take it. We'll see. I've seen some shit, so we'll see.
But it's good to know. It's good to know.
It's a good precursor.
One of my other favorites that is not as easy to find. I don't even know where. I have it on Blu-ray, so, but I don't know where other folks can find it. It's called A Lizard in a Woman's Skin, which is very queer. Ends up being queer in not a great way at the end, but everything up to that is great, and it just has these gorgeous, really creepy and disturbing nightmare sequences. It's a Lucio Fulci directed film, and yeah, I would definitely recommend searching that one out if you can. But even if you go on Shudder's Giallo playlist, I mean, if you just throw a dart at the screen, that you're gonna hit one that has queerness in it.
That's why the name was so familiar, because I've seen that tab on Shudder, but I was always like, oh, I don't know what that is. Sorry.
Now you know.
I just like see it. So it's nice to know, that's why Giallo sounded familiar.
There's also a great tie-in to queerness, in the 60s Giallo universe, where queer people were also often not like the real version of incest, but like step.
Good.
And
Good.
one of the really famous ones is on there called Orgasmo.
Okay. Well, that's where I'm starting. That'll be what I watch for bed tonight.
It's like what I was saying before about like the ostensibly straight woman who's lured away by a queer woman. Well, in this case, she's lured away by step siblings that sleep with each other and with her.
Oh,
so it's
cool.
Yeah,
it's that also. Yeah, that seems like it would scratch I'm a big vampire fan, and I feel like that scratches like a vampire itch for me. So I'll start there. Perfect recommendation.
Where can people find? We're gonna put like all the information for the crowdfunding and everything, Indiegogo, in downstairs. What is it called?
Downstairs
in the description.
Is good.
But do you want to like kind of plug any of your socials, Colin, whether yours personal or Bath Bomb?
So all the Bath Bomb stuff is Bath Bomb Horror. So bathbombhorror.com, and at Bath Bomb Horror is who we are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And then myself, I only use Instagram, and it's just my name, all one word, Colin G. Cooper. No spaces or punctuation of any kind.
Awesome.
Amazing. And we can't wait to hopefully have you back once Bath Bomb is out into the world.
Yes.
I'm so looking forward to it. And we're so happy to have had you on. And thank you to everyone for listening to this very special episode. We had so much fun. You can find us on Twitter, if you still use that, at FearQueersPod, on Instagram at LGBTQVHS, and you can email us at fearqueers@gmail.com with your Giallo recommendations. We love to learn here at FearQueers. So give us all those recommendations, step siblings or not. And You can let us know what you think about this episode in the comments on YouTube, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Oh, Colin, at the end of each episode, we say, until next time, gay frights. If you're interested, feel free to join us.
No
if you're
pressure.
interested, no pressure. So until next time.
Until next time.
Gay
Right.
Woo!
Be afraid. Be very afraid. Now available on video cassette and select DVD. They'll leave you screaming for more.